Good afternoon, class. It's Jake Buerger again here with you today. So for today's speech, I actually wanted to share with you guys something I learned back in high school about a teeny little animal that is very, very interesting, and it is called the North American wood frog. Now, for those of you who haven't heard this frog, it's not just any normal frog. It actually has a very interesting defense mechanism during the winter to help it survive in extremely cold climates. And when I first heard about this frog, I thought it was very interesting. So that's what I want to share with you guys today. So in this speech, I'm going to be going over its location and its home. I'm going to be going over just some basic information on it. I'm also going to be going over its defense mechanism, which is it freezes, and how it's able to freeze and how it's essentially able to die and come back to life during springtime. So let's get into it. The North American wood frog is a sub-zero climate living animal, which means it's able to survive in extremely cold temperatures anywhere around the world, really. And there's not many animals out there that can survive and thrive in extremely cold temperatures. It's located throughout the northern part of North America, so Canada and Alaska is where it's really prominent at. But it also lives in the eastern northern part of United States, Georgia up to Maine. So its defense mechanism, though, to be able to live in Canada and Alaska is that it, like I said before, it completely freezes over. So it turns into a little ball of ice. Its heart shuts down. It stops pumping blood throughout its body. Its brain stops working. It's all of its organs shut down. Everything completely shuts down, and the animal essentially dies. And I mean, if you were to step on the little thing, you'd crush into pieces of ice. So it's able to do this by one very special trick that it's able to do in its body. So it's able to produce a urine. It produces urine, and instead of releasing it out of his body, it actually goes into his body. So it's all throughout his body, through his veins, his stomach, everywhere. And not this urine alone doesn't do anything. What else it needs is glucose. And it produces large amounts of glucose from its liver. And for those of you who don't know what glucose is, that's a very sugary substance that all bodies produce. But once this glucose and its urine mixes, it actually creates a type of antifreeze in its body. So it's essentially the same thing that is in a car to keep cars from freezing over during wintertime. So it has this throughout its body, and it pools in its stomach, and it pools in its veins, and it keeps its blood from freezing. So it almost becomes a slushy type. If the frog was to freeze or lose 65% of its water, or 65% of the water was to freeze, the frog would die. So to keep that from happening, it uses this antifreeze to freeze it, but not completely freeze it. So at a cellular level, the cells are able to survive. They just essentially freeze, but they don't dehydrate. So it keeps that moisture and that water inside the cells that it needs. And this is very essential, because if we know that all living things, if they freeze, that water inside our bodies turns to ice. And what happens to ice when it goes from water to ice is it expands. So really, essentially, if we were to freeze, our veins would explode, our bodies would explode, because the water in our bodies would expand. So this little antifreeze that the frog produces is able to keep that from happening. Now, during springtime, the frog thaws out. Now, this is the most dangerous part, really, in essentially any living thing freezing, because ice just tears up the body. It pokes little holes in the veins, which with this frog, when it does freeze, the ice inside of its veins will poke holes, and it'll rip holes throughout its veins, throughout its bodies and muscles. But it creates a protein that is able to seal up these holes and repair these muscles and tears that it goes through very quickly, actually. And so once the frog defrosts, it's able to essentially just warm up, and its heart starts beating again, its brain starts working, and within 30 minutes the frog actually just comes back to life, and like nothing happened, and it goes on its way, and will jump into a pond, and all that urine and glucose in its body gets rid of it, and it's essentially good to go, and it's able to survive. And this frog is very interesting because if you think how it's able to freeze during winter, and humans have been trying to freeze themselves to preserve themselves, cryogenics. It's one little interesting thing to look at and to think about. Maybe look at this frog and see where we can take a human engineering by natural living things. So thank you for letting me share my speech with you. I hope you thought it was interesting, and I look forward to seeing whenever everyone else's speech is later today. Thank you.